Hey, I'm David. I'm going to show you how Tinybird Forward makes it possible to iterate on data projects in production with no downtime. I'll demonstrate this by adding multi-tenancy to a logs explorer that's already processing over 1 billion rows. I'm using the logs explorer template built with Next.js and Tinybird. Currently, this is an internal facing app, so I can see the logs for all of my users. But this is very valuable information for my users, so I want to make this user facing. It needs to be multi-tenant, so I need to iterate my data project to filter on each user's data. Right now, I'm ingesting live data. And here's where you can see that I already have over 1 billion rows in this project. To iterate on this project, I'm going to need to use Tinybird Forward to develop and test locally, then deploy my changes to production and let Tinybird handle the migration for me with no downtime. So let's switch over to Cursor and get started. First thing I'm going to do is start a Tinybird local container. Then I need to authenticate with Tinybird, so I'll run TV login, choose my region, and select my workspace. Go back to Cursor. I'm also going to start the Tinybird dev server with this UI flag so that I can open up my local project in the UI and access all my resources there. Okay, great. So I next need to add all of my environment variables so I can run my project locally. So I'm going to grab my workspace ID and tokens directly from the UI. To make this multi-tenant, I'm going to use Clerk. And this template already has Clerk integrated. So I just need to grab my API keys from Clerk, and this should work as expected. Okay, great. So in my project, I already have a data fixture. I have this SQL file that I'm using to mock up some data and to produce an MD.json file. And so since I already have my dev server running in Tinybird, I can open up a new terminal, navigate to the right directory, and I'll do npm run dev to start my local app. Okay, great. So you can see now my app is running locally, and it's using the data that I just showed from that fixture file. You can see in the bottom left here that I'm actually signed in already via Clerk. Okay. So I created a user for myself that's part of an organization, and I signed in. And Clerk is creating a JSON web token for each of the unique users and embedding parameters within that JWT. But I'm not currently using those parameters in my data project. So that's what I'm going to need to change here. So let's flip back to Cursor. And now we can focus on actually editing that data project. So there's a couple changes that I'm going to need to make here. First of all, in this logs data source file, you can see that I already have the org ID and the user ID in my data source, in my schema. But these fields aren't being used in my queries to filter on. So that's what I'm going to need to change. Since I'm going to be filtering on the org ID and user ID, it probably makes sense to add them to my sorting key. So I'm going to update each of these data sources, including the materialized views, and then add the filter to my endpoints. Okay, so I updated all of the materialized views and the related data sources, and my project rebuilt successfully. Now I need to go ahead and edit all of my endpoints to actually add the filters, the filter conditions for org ID and user ID. Okay, so I've added the filters to filter on the org ID and the user ID parameters, and my project rebuilt successfully. Now, if I go back to the local app that's running, I'm now seeing less data because I'm filtering on a specific org ID and a user ID. If I sign out and do a hard refresh, I would expect to see more data here, which I do, because this is no longer using that JSON web token and filtering on the org ID. It's using my default token that has much broader access to the data. So I can see more data. Let's test that one more time. Let me log in. And when I do a hard refresh here, I can now see much less data because I'm just filtered on my user and my organization. Okay, so that looks great. Now I'm going to go back to cursor. My project is built, so I can exit the dev session. If I want to, I could create some fixture tests so that I can test my endpoints in my CI/CD pipeline. I'm going to cover that in a later video. So for now, I'm just going to run this tb cloud deploy command with a check flag. And this is going to tell me all of the resources that changed and verify if Tinybird is able to migrate my project from the old state that's live right now to this new state that I created. So I changed a lot of resources here, and I'm getting a couple errors. So since I'm changing several of the data sources, this is telling me that if I want to maintain all of my existing data, I'm going to have to use a forward query. Tinybird doesn't know how to save my existing data and migrate to the new version, but I'm making a non-backwards compatible change here. I'm adding new columns that didn't exist in these materialized views before. So since it's a destructive action, I'm okay with that. I'm going to need to recalculate all of these materialized views. So I'm going to add this allow destructive operations flag. Looks like all of those errors are the same. So let's run that same command again, but with this allow destructive operations flag. Okay, now it's telling me that the deployment is valid. So I'm going to fully recalculate all of my materialized views. So now I can remove this check flag and just run tb cloud deploy with that allow destructive operations flag. And when I run this, several things are going to happen. Tinybird is creating a new staging deployment. It's starting to move around some of the data for me. So since I modified the landing logs data source, it's going to migrate that data. It's going to fully recalculate those materialized views, and it's going to create the new versions of those endpoints in this new isolated staging environment. Once that staging deployment is complete, Tinybird is going to automatically promote it to live and remove the old live version. Only once that staging deployment is complete and is promoted to live will my existing requests start going to this new deployment. Depending on how much data you have, since I have over 1 billion rows, this step could take some time. So I'll see you back here when this is done. Okay, so that took about 2 hours. The deployment finished and was promoted to live. I can check out the deployment in the Tinybird UI. I can see all of the resources that were modified. I can even see the diff to see specifically what changed in each resource. And if I go to the deployment list, can now see this new live deployment. Now, let's check out the app. I also updated the clerk API keys in my production environment variables to enable multi-tenancy in my production instance. So now you can see that there's a sign in button here. So if I go ahead and sign in and do a hard refresh, the logged dashboard is now filtered on just my data. And that's it. I made my changes locally, deployed them to the cloud, and Tinybird handled the migration of over 1 billion rows for me with no downtime. I use the CLI manually to create the deployments, but in a future video, I'll show how you can integrate Tinybird into your CI/CD pipeline to automate testing and deployments.